Warriors, episode 425.
Woo.
As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by my cromulent co-host, Chris Saturn.
I'm very cromulent, Justin. How cromulent are you today?
I'm quite cromulent.
Excellent.
Yeah. Pablo wrote that line for me. He was like, you got to use this.
That's a pretty good one. I got to give him props for that.
This is weird. I feel weird. It's a weird start. We had to change how long we're silent before we start the show, and I feel like
Yeah.
I'm off kilter from it.
Right. And also we're recording in the morning when we normally record in the evening.
It's very strange. It's very strange not feeling so tired that I can't stand it.
On the plus side, for anybody who's listening to this in the morning, we're finally on the same wavelength this year.
Yeah, there you go. Last night, I was like, hey, I'm just too wiped. This week's been crazy. Today's been crazy. Can we record tomorrow? And y'all are like, sure. And then I immediately went and laid down and took a 2-hour nap. Like, in that moment.
Nice.
I had a housekeeping thing, but I forgot what it was. So we have
come
Patreon.
back to it if we need to.
You can go listen to it if you want. Well, you don't listen to it. You subscribe on it. That's how that. That's
And then
how that
you
works.
listen to it.
And then you may listen to it. I feel
We're
like
going to get through this.
I don't ever put our plugs in the beginning of the show, so it
true.
you know, for those people that tune out as soon as my transition hits, and they're like, I can't listen to this anymore. This is too awkward. Just gentle reminder that we have Patreon.
Yep.
We have a link tree with all links to all of our stuff.
Yeah,
and
Discord where you can come talk to us, where we spend literally all of our day and we don't shut up.
And if you just want to jump to the topic at hand and you don't want to listen to us jabber, there's also a timestamp in the description, which we haven't said in a while.
That's true.
My week.
Yes, sir.
I've been playing the games on PC, and they are fun, and I like them. I've
On
been
Steam Deck?
I've been wanting to play something on my Steam Deck. But the thing about Steam Deck is, it is a PC, and it is a relatively low-powered PC.
Right.
And so there's a lot of like, oh, this will run on it, but it's so hot and loud and drains the battery so fast that like I'm plugged into an outlet. And if I'm plugged into an outlet, I might as well just play it on my TV through Steam Link or something.
Right.
And so it's just kind of bouncing around. Like, you know, that feeling where you're like, I want to play something on this platform.
Yeah.
But I don't know what, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I finally, after quitting the game I'm going to talk about next, I went back to Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
And God, that game, it runs so shockingly well on deck.
I would just like to take a moment to note how well you enunciated the pause between Doom and Eternal.
I've learned to do it that way because I dictate all my Discord messages, and when I'm talking about it, it always wants to put Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
Like maternal.
Yeah, which is
so
honestly more fun.
Now it's Doom Eternal.
Yes.
It's very clearly enunciated. I don't know what kind of like blood pact they made with the devil to program this game that it scales this well and looks this good and runs this good on
if it runs on the Switch well enough, I can't imagine that it wouldn't run on the deck pretty well.
I haven't played Doom Eternal on Switch, but I played Doom 2016, and I would say it does run on the Switch. But that's about all I'd say. It's very impressive they got it running.
Right.
But it's like 30 FPS. It doesn't look awesome. Like, it's what you would expect from a Switch port, you know? But on deck, it like barely heats up. It's pretty good on battery life. It scales great. It's pretty much locked at 60. It's on high settings. It's just, I'm constantly so impressed with that game. I'm so impressed with how fun it is, how well it runs. It's just great. It's a very impressive game.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not an impressive game.
Ouch.
From a technical standpoint, is Baldur's Gate 3, which I've finally decided I am quitting.
Yeah.
I put in 29 hours.
Oof.
About 6 of those were playing multiplayer with my group.
Yeah.
And the issues have just been mounting. It's to the point where I'm dissatisfied with it. I realized I was dissatisfied enough that I was getting agitated that it had the highest score ever of any PC game on OpenCritic.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a point of diminishing returns. I'm now just agitated at the entire culture surrounding this game.
Yeah.
and I'm agitated at the praise being heaped on it.
Right.
And I need to stop. I need to back up because I don't want to be that guy that's yucking anyone else's yum.
Right.
That's like, actually, it's a really bad game. Where I don't want to be that. I'm not that. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the person that leaves the 0-star review in the comments on Metacritic. I don't want to be that guy.
I hear you.
I
understand.
My issue is it runs bad on deck. It should not have been deck verified.
Damn.
And I went and I double checked in the Steam store, and Steam purports that any game with the green check mark is a, quote, great experience on deck.
Yeah.
It is a bad experience on deck. It's not good. And I've played enough hours of it on deck that I would highly encourage anyone thinking about picking it up who is only going to play it on deck to not do that. Don't do it. Maybe they'll fix it in patches. Maybe it'll get better. Hopefully it will, And so I had switched to PC, and I was still having problems, and I was like, man, in my head I keep thinking like Divinity Original Sin is so much better than this, DOS 2 specifically. And I was like, is it me just getting in my own head? Maybe I just enjoyed that game more, and this is more of the same, and it's not new and exciting, and I don't know. So I go back to DOS 2, and instantly a huge amount of my complaints are immediately addressed. The game runs like a dream. It's locked at like 144 FPS. I know that it is a less visually impressive game. It's snappy, it's fast, it's fun. I was immediately right back in it. I was like, man, this game is great. And so I feel confident in my complaints. And I want to reiterate by saying that the story and the characterization specifically in Baldur's Gate 3 is top-notch. I legitimately care about the characters. It's great. I wish all the rest of the game would fuck off and we could just hang out in camp talking and having sex and just doing the camp stuff. Like, that's really good. Right. It's a very well-written game.
Yeah.
The actual plot line is kind of cookie cutter, but you sort of expect that from, video games like this. It's like, in some way, you are a chosen one. Venture forth. Like, that's kind of how it works out, too, right? But it's one, I have issues with 5th edition D&D combat. And I have had issues with 5th edition D&D combat for a number of years now. It's why I no longer engage in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I still think it's a great edition of the game. It is possibly the most accessible edition of the game. But I'm not there for the combat. It's not where I am anymore. And this game does nothing to address any of those concerns. All my problems with 5th edition combat are still there, and they still exist. Also, the distances in the game are really big. The battlefields are much bigger to accommodate for like proper D&D ranges, right? Because D&D weapons rate their ranges like a short bow is like, it can shoot up to 150 feet. That's a pretty good.
Yeah.
Or it's like 150 and then 300 is long range, or maybe that's a long bow. I don't remember. It's big ranges. And so the game and Larian accommodating D&D, for my money, made the actual combat experience worse. Because one, in D&D, not every class and every character gets really good combat traversal abilities.
Yeah.
In DOS 2, almost every character has really good traversal abilities. They have ways to quickly teleport or move or jump around the battlefield.
Makes sense.
And 5th edition D&D doesn't have that. You kind of have to spec into that. That has to be what you're going for. 5th edition D&D has different types of actions. There is your standard action. So on your turn, you can take a standard action, which is like an attack or, something along the cast a spell. And then you have a bonus action, right? And you have a reaction. And there's these different types of actions. In DOS 2, it's just, here's your action pips. You got 4 action pips. Spend them however you want. Maybe you take one big action that takes 4 pips, or maybe you take 4 small actions that each cost 1 pip. Moving is a pip. The distance determines how many pips it consumes. And it's just, in a video game format, cleaner. I'm not worried about like, all right, what action type is this? Oh, I have an action left, but it's the wrong action type. And it just, I don't know. And the big distances, and it just feels like a slog. And it's really, really, really hard. I'm on the easiest difficulty, and I'm sitting there. What I did is I reached a combat that I had to repeat. I couldn't figure out how to progress the story without hitting this combat, and I was having to repeat this combat. I was on my 5th or 6th repeat, and it was maybe an hour 15-minute long combat. And I just realized that I was sitting there getting literally nowhere. And I would load my autosave, and I would try to find a different way to do it, or reposition my characters very slightly to like, hey, maybe I can get an advantage doing this or being on higher ground or whatever. And I realized that I'm no longer really playing an RPG. I'm just in what is a not awesome tactics game, you know?
That's a shame.
And if I want to go play a tactics game, there are really amazingly fun tactics games out there.
Yep.
And I think as a tactics game, BG3 is not top tier for me. And if you're the kind of person where you're like, no, I fucking love 5th edition combat, I get super into character builds, I'm all about it, then you probably won't have this complaint at all, because you've already got these optimal min-maxed builds in your head, and so you don't care. So I bounced off that. I installed it off my Steam Deck. I've kept it installed on my PC. I'm going to keep kind of following it in patches and stuff. My hope is that 6 months from now, there will be enough patches and mods that I can make the game that I want.
I heard there was a patch the last day or two that supposedly improved performance quite a bit.
Yeah, they did a performance patch, but I had already uninstalled it off my deck, and it's 150 gigabyte download. So nice. I've yet to put it back on my deck to try it out.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, I did pick up the TMNT Shredder's Revenge DLC.
Oh, how is that?
That game is so good. Just a fun. It is. I said it before. I think I might have used the phrase "I think," but I know it is the best TMNT brawler that exists.
Nice.
There's not a better one. This one is great. They added Usagi Yojimbo, which they changed.
What about the Tiger handheld brawler?
It's slightly better, I'm afraid.
Oh, weird.
They added Usagi Yojimbo. They added Karai. And they added some like collectibles and stuff that I haven't found. I don't know what that even means. I just go play the levels. Right. And I jumped into some online matches. So I'm playing it on deck, and I just hit the find players button because I was like, well, it's a brawler. I want to play it with other people. And immediately jumped into a 6-person online game. And it was just so much fun. It's just really fun, man. 6-person online TMNT brawler is a dream. It runs great. It's locked at 60. Connectivity is good. I had like 2 spots of lag that got kind of weird, and that was it. And the game sat there for a moment, bounced me back to the menu, and then put me right back in it where we were in the boss battle we were in.
Nice. And the good thing about it being online is that when you accidentally eat food or whatever when someone else needs it, they can't slap you like at the arcade.
Well, what they did do in this one, I think it's all pizzas. Any pizza you get gives everybody health, I've noticed.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know if that's just specific pizzas, because some of them are like double wide, Pizza Hut Bigfoot pizzas. You remember the Bigfoot?
Yeah. Before they had Bigfoot, they had Pizza at Little Caesars, where they both came in one oversized package.
So I don't know if it's just those or not, because when you're playing 6 players in a brawler, it's insanity.
Yeah.
It's just a joy. It is it is a game filled with joy and love, and it's fun, and it's great, and it's easy, and it runs on everything, and it's awesome. So I do kind of wish they had added some levels. I just assumed they were adding new levels. And then I got them. They did not. No, not weird. That I can find anyway. And I read the patch notes, and I was like, oh, they never actually said they were adding levels. It's just kind of assumed, right?
Yeah. It's weird.
And so I was kind of bummed about that. And I was like, well, I'll jump in some online games and see what's up. And the person, the leader of the party or whatever in the online game, the host, that's the word I'm looking for. The president of the party, the elected mayor of our party.
The Senate majority leader of the Ninja Turtles.
Was just going to some later levels, and I was playing them, and I was like, oh yeah, there's so many levels, and they're so long sometimes that I don't remember them anyways. These might as well be new.
Nice.
But it's a blast, man. They did add a lot of new color palettes for everyone. They added some color palettes, so everyone can be Game Boy colored, like the green on green.
Nice.
They added color palettes that match the new Ninja Turtles movie. It's just full of joy. What a fun, awesome game. Highly, highly, highly recommended.
Nice.
It's a blast. What have you been playing, Saturn? You've been playing some of them there video games?
I played a game. I played a game.
Oh my gosh.
I was playing Tinykin. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
played this yet or not.
No, I've
but
I
I
have no idea.
I encountered it on Game Pass. Somebody had recommended it to me as something that doesn't require a massive investment, and you can just kind of plug away at it a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started getting into it, I learned it's leaving Game Pass soon. Damn it!
Oh, well, there you go.
But I might just
you
buy
could
it.
buy it.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm enjoying it. So it's basically Pikmin, but without time limits.
Uh-huh.
And
Does modern Pikmin still have time limits? 'Cause
I don't know.
you just
I
mean
don't-
Pikmin 1. It's basically
Right,
Pikmin
yeah.
1, no time limits.
Yeah, it's Pikmin mixed with a collectathon kind of.
Mhm.
So you've got this big open world. Also, I have not encountered any enemies yet. Like it's puzzle Pikmin.
Oh, okay.
So it's
right up your alley.
right. It's very lighthearted, but it still controls like Pikmin, where you collect these little creatures and you make them do your bidding.
Mhm.
But rather than you having to fight enemies or survive any amount, you just go and find puzzle pieces and lead your little not Pikmin to wherever that puzzle piece needs to go.
Right.
And it's cute and it's charming and it has this nice animated art style. So it's been fun, and I'm a little sad that it is already leaving Game Pass because I was taking advantage of it to get my daily achievement for rewards points. But
Mhm.
it's cute and it is bite sized, and it was simple enough that I was actually able to put some time into it without
There you go.
feeling like I had to relearn how to play it every day when I picked it up.
Yeah.
So
As I was
dig it.
bouncing around in games on my Steam Deck, I was running into that where I was like, shit, I forgot how to play this game.
Exactly, right?
Or like, oh, I forgot what weird mod loader I need to put on the front of this game to make it function properly.
Right.
And now I got to do that research again, and I'm just not going to do it.
Or when you suddenly remember that this one didn't actually have gamepad controls and you had to map some weird
Right.
mouse and keyboard shit.
Yeah, and then the game is like, press F, and you're like, where did I fucking map F to?
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
shit.
Yeah.
Well, let's do some news then.
Okie dokie.
First cop. First cop.
First cop.
I was trying to say first up, and the first sentence here says as Capcom, and I just combined Capcom and first. As Capcom sunsets Mega Man Cross Dive,
Mega Man X
They're a-
Dive.
Mega Man X Dive. I mean, in Japan, it's supposed to be a cross.
Yeah, but
There's
it's
a thing
about Mega
after
Man
it.
X, I think.
They're allowing people to get characters as NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
What? It's so exciting! All those great dive characters that you love so much could be a JPEG you paid money for.
Now, my question is, does it let people like turn their existing characters that they've worked on in the game? I don't understand. I don't know how Dive worked to begin with.
I don't either, and apparently we don't get to find out. So-
Yeah, because it's gone now. I guess we can experience it in NFT form now.
I'm just fucking over the NFT thing. Like, fuck off.
Don't worry, so is almost everyone else.
Charles Martinet stepping down as
Martinet.
voice. Martinet stepping down as voice of Mario will continue to serve as voice/brand ambassador. I don't know what that means.
Apparently, he will continue to help train the new Mario voices and support them in helping find voice styles or whatever, as well as touring around and promoting Mario as a character and Nintendo as a brand and shit.
I feel like there's a lot of people who are like, oh man, I couldn't handle him for a full movie doing that goofy Mario voice.
Mhm.
And I've seen that multiple times. People saying, well, they picked Chris Pratt because nobody wants to listen to him for an hour and a half.
You know, I listened to him as Mario for way longer than an hour and a half every time I play the games.
Yeah, also, he is a storied voice actor.
Right.
Like, he has had many other jobs. Granted, like 60% of them are Mario, but like he has a range, right?
yeah,
He doesn't
right.
just show up and do an Italian stereotype and then go home. Like, he just does other shit.
Right.
This does kind of make the Illumination film choice make a little bit more sense because I don't know. In my
Now,
head,
that
I'm
said,
like,
supposedly Wonder is the first game that won't have Martinet as the voice. And
Yeah.
the clips they've shown is of Wonder, which they just did a Nintendo Direct a couple days ago
Yeah.
for Wonder, still basically sounds like Martinet's Mario
yeah,
voice.
it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
I've already seen the news articles that are like, will Chris Pratt voice Mario
No.
in the video games moving forward? And I'm like,
No.
Do you have any fucking idea how much it costs to get Chris Pratt to voice something for you? No, he will not.
If they make a movie based on a game based on the movie, then they'll get that guy that played Chris Pratt's character in the Guardians of the Galaxy game to play.
Like, and you know, it's one of those things where like, it's for people that don't know, it's a thing in Hollywood when regular actors are cast in voice acting roles. Voice actors usually get upset about it.
Yeah.
Because that's their territory. This is their work, and people are showing up getting these jobs just by virtue of being more famous than them.
Right.
There are a lot of really amazing voice actors that can sound just about like anybody.
Right.
So I don't see any reason why they would pay Chris Pratt to show up and do Mario Wonder. Like, that makes no sense.
What's more, it's people are acting like this doesn't happen all the time in animation. I mean, do we really think the original voice of Bugs Bunny is still doing it? Of course not.
He's not.
He died some time ago.
What?
I know. We're on at least the third Shaggy at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we forget about it, you know, because that's that. And this is another thing you hear voice actors complain about if you ever go listen to them talk about their craft and their work. And it's that people don't pay attention to or notice voice actors because when they're done well, you don't notice them.
Right.
You know, and there are a few kind of famous examples of voice actors, but when they're doing their job right, you just don't notice them.
Yeah, one of the first ones that I did notice, like I could tell that this was a voice I knew, was when they replaced Buster Bunny on Tiny Toons back in the day, because his second voice actor is the same guy that does the voice for the Crypt Keeper.
Oh yeah, what's that guy's name?
John Kasser.
Yes, thank you. You mean the guy from the Legend of Zelda commercial?
Yeah, also that, yes. And from the Reefer Madness musical. And I just happened to pick up just a touch of Crypt Keeper in his voice one time. And then I looked in the credits and it was him. And I was maybe 10 years old at the time, but I remember being like, they changed the voices?
Yeah. Microsoft will sell the cloud rights of Activision Blizzard's games to Ubisoft to appease the CMA if their deal finalizes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like somewhere in the CMA, someone has got to be like, we're just trying to stop these corporations from taking everything over. And then Microsoft's like, what if we let other corporation also lord something over you? And then this CMA is like, yeah, okay. Like, what? Again, I've said it before. I appreciate that the CMA is taking steps to stop these massive corporate consolidations, but they're picking the dumbest battles about it.
Yes.
It's very weird. Like, I'm glad they're there fighting the good fight, but also, what a weird... It's so weird.
And immediately, Ubisoft put out a press release that was like, we are proud to announce that Diablo 2 and Crash Bandicoot are coming to Uplay streaming. Like, that's weird. One, those aren't your games. Two, you don't have the rights yet.
Yeah, it's not even over.
Who is coming to Uplay for that? Like, really, who's coming to Uplay is the question.
Exactly that. Who the fuck is doing? So I don't know. It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. Users have found a way to get the WonderSwan's web browser back online.
Yay.
Ditch your smartphone. Who the hell needs that thing? Web browsing on the WonderSwan.
I hope they can also figure out the Dreamcast web browser. I spent a lot of time on that.
As someone who still uses ancient web browsers, I have a text-based web browser.
Nice.
It's command line that I use relatively frequently for Linux stuff.
Nice.
The modern web just doesn't work if you don't have like all of the technology and shit behind it. Like the web 3.0 broke compatibility with all this older shit. So like, yeah, you could look up like a forum from when that web browser was, modern if it's still up.
As somebody who likes to play with VMs of old operating systems and stuff, even trying to get a compatible browser onto those old operating systems is difficult because their default browsers can't load the websites needed to download the new ones.
Yeah. You basically, you got to FTP it over or some shit. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Atari is releasing a new 2600 console that works with classic or new games or controllers, has native HDMI output. I kind of I kind of want to get it.
Yeah, I've been staring at it. It looks
It's
really good.
$120 and
Right.
it includes a cartridge with like a bunch of games on it.
Yep,
And I'm
yep.
like, man, it's just straight up an Atari 2600 again.
Right. Now that said, you used to have an Atari Flashback, and
Yes.
you sold it to me because you realized you never wanted it.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I'm just excited that they're like
Right.
this is an exciting concept
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, me too.
This is the continuation of the mini console
Right.
thing, which we both greatly enjoyed.
Oh,
Of
yeah.
like, hey, what if it's a mini console, but it also plays cartridges?
Right. Yeah, and I'm
Oh,
I'm a fan of this idea, and I still have a bunch of my Atari 2600 cartridges. And being able to play, Frogger or Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers
Sword
on the big
Quest.
screen is nice. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Because those are the games that are not included with these classic consoles, the mini consoles, because they can't
Right.
get the rights to them. But if you still have the cartridge, they can't stop you.
MGS Master Collection just uses the prior HD collection as its base and can only hit 30 FPS on Switch.
That means that
Oh.
the Switch version of MGS 2 and 3 is a downgrade from the Xbox 360 and PS3 version.
Awesome. I love that. Oh boy. I love
the-
that that's happening.
The initial story said that it was only going to run at 720p on every console, but Konami had to come out and correct that it can hit 1080 on a PS5 or Series X.
How
Yeah.
the power and efficiency of modern computing allows for a lot of laziness, but this is like top-notch laziness.
Right.
Like,
And
man.
I'm curious how lazy they're going to be in the production on MGS1 in this collection.
Yeah.
And also how Psycho Mantis is going to work.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Night Dive.
Well, you have to go into a menu to tell it to change your controller port?
Obviously, yes, Saturn.
God, that'll be sad.
Night Dive is working on a remaster of Star Wars Dark Forces. That was the N64 one?
No,
right?
it's a PC game. It was
Oh.
a precursor to Jedi Knight.
Okay, yeah. I didn't really play any of those Star Wars. I've played very few Star Wars games in general, unless you count Lego. So, which
The
is
Dark
weird
Forces
because I like
series-
Star Wars.
Dark Forces was generally really well received. It was the FPS series of Star Wars games,
Yeah.
and they were pretty good. And apparently, Night Dive has been trying to get the rights to this for several years,
Yeah.
and Disney is finally playing ball and letting them have at it.
Good.
All right,
PlayStation Portal, which is what they're calling their streaming
goofy
device,
handheld. Yeah,
has a price revealed at $200. But hold on.
yeah.
$200, that's not terrible, you may think, requires
Mhm.
a PS5 to use. And let me remind anyone
Mhm.
that you can stream PlayStation to any old Android phone or
Yep.
PC or
true.
Steam Deck or
Right.
anything else.
But you need a controller. Oh, wait, one comes with your PS5.
So what is this for?
So the way that Sony is pitching it is that it is not a handheld device. It is a PS5 accessory, much like the PSVR 2 is. And it is something that PS5 owners would purchase as an additional accessory for their PS5. And immediately people started asking them, well, does that mean it'll have second screen technology like the Wii U? And
Which
they
would be
said
cool.
no. It
Okay,
is
does that
just
mean that it
streaming.
can stream PlayStation Cloud streaming directly to it without a PlayStation?
No.
No.
You need a PS5. And in fact, they haven't confirmed if it'll work with the cloud streaming function of the PS5 because then it'll be streaming a streaming source and might be rights issues there.
I don't know who this is for or who's going to buy this.
Right.
But I'll say that if you're considering this, I want to know why. Please join the Discord and just be like, this is why. No, we're not going to make fun of you. I promise. I just want to fucking know. Like, who is like, yeah, my phone can do that, but now it's $200. Like, what?
Also, let us not forget how stupid it looks.
It looks so dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this about it. At least it's got some ergonomics on it. It's
Oh, yeah.
not just another flat board.
Right.
I'm
Like
so
the
sick of
PSP.
just the flat or like the Switch.
Yep.
Tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Denuvo, the
boy.
much celebrated anti-piracy software, has been authorized as Switch middleware. And let me just say that I've never in my life seen a piece of middleware software, which is what they call software that goes in between two other softwares, and thought, that's good and necessary. Never once. Never has it occurred.
You mean
Never ever.
you haven't ever found yourself thinking, I'm so glad I had to install Java Virtual Machine on this computer?
Yep, never enjoyed that. For people that are thinking, well, hey, they're just putting anti-piracy on there, who cares? The problem is Denuvo is well noted for hampering performance on games that it is added to. And for people that also may not realize, the Switch is operating on some pretty razor-thin performance margins. Because it's basically a Samsung Galaxy 3 with controllers on it. It's
And also they've shown time and again that Denuvo often results in a worse performance for the people who legally purchased the software than for the people who pirated it, because it's pretty easy to get around. The pirates get around it all the time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even serve its purpose. It just makes a worse experience for the legal customers.
Yeah. Which brings us to our topic at hand.
Also, just so we don't sound like we're shitting on the Switch, Denuvo is also on PS5. Because fuck Denuvo.
There's got to be a better, I don't know, just give it up. Give up the anti-piracy shit, because it doesn't work, and all it does is harm customers. That's my stance on it.
Exactly.
Which now brings us to our topic at hand, which is Mario Paint.
Yay.
What if MS Paint, but Nintendo? What? This was developed by Nintendo R&D1 and Intelligent Systems, released in 1992 in all regions across the board within a few months of one another. As far as first encounters, I cannot overstate how important Mario Paint was in my life.
Yeah.
And it's for a couple of reasons. First up, it came out in 1992 when I was 4.
Mm-hmm.
Actually came out August 92, so I was 3 when it hit the shelves.
Yeah.
And I had the game from a young age, and the thing is, and it's a thing that I grapple with a lot whenever I'm introducing my daughter to video games, because she has like a mild interest.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be playing some game for the show or whatever, and she'll go, well, I want to play. And it's like, she can't. She doesn't, she's, doesn't have the hand-eye coordination or the library of video game knowledge required to recognize certain things, And it's been especially fascinating watching this because, and I'm going to go on a tangent already, so immediately into the topic I'm going on a tangent. I found a video online, and I talked about it in the Discord, of this guy who had his wife or girlfriend or someone play video games, and they were not a gamer.
Right.
And he was like, I'm just going to hand them video games and watch them play it, and that's it.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of points about, hey, there's a lot of assumed knowledge and experience that goes into even basic games.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, I had problems with the video because, one, he never helped his significant other.
Right.
He never let them have the manual or the strategy guide or look anything up on the internet. Just dumped him into Elden Ring and was like, figure it out. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Right.
And even he had one point where he was yelling, not yelling, he was like, she didn't even know you can hold B to run in Mario. It was infuriating to watch. And I was like, yeah, but she would have read it in the manual.
Right.
And if she was a kid and went to the playground the next day, someone would have been like, you just hold B to run, dummy.
Yeah.
So, but problems with the video aside, it did get me thinking about the, and I think he phrased it as, the language of video games.
Right.
And so watching my daughter and my wife get really into playing games on their Switch right now, because we all have Switches now, and it's now become our family occurrence where every day it's like, all right, it's Switch time. We're going to all play Animal Crossing or Pokemon or whatever. And watching them go through this stuff, it makes me really cognizant of the fact that they don't have that library of knowledge. They are vastly different ages, as you would presume from a mother and child. And they don't have this library, this wealth of knowledge, this years of experience. Yeah. And I realized that that's why stuff like Mario Paint was so big for me when I was a kid. Because it was a game I could play without knowing video games.
Right.
Without having to have that video game language baked in to, because even by the Super Nintendo, a lot of games kind of had this baked in knowledge already. It started early, and so I played obscene amounts of this game.
Yeah.
Played is a strong word because only like 30% of it even is a game.
Right.
But I spent humongous amounts of hours in Mario Paint, just painting, drawing, making music, hanging out, and as just a software suite, it was extremely impactful to me when I was a kid.
And as someone who's just a couple years older than you, it was also incredibly useful because while I did have the video game knowledge going into it, I had basically zero experience ever using a mouse before I got to Mario Paint. Yeah. And it was such an incredible introduction to the mouse. The only question was, why is there a second button on it?
Why is there a second
and
button?
It wasn't until years and years and years later that I learned that you can turn on the right mouse button, and it has functions in Mario Paint.
I'm sorry. We need to stop the show. Because you have just blown my mind out of the back of my head.
Okay, so on the title screen, if you click on the N, it shows you the staff credits, right?
Right. Then,
when it shows the programmer's name, I don't remember his name, Noriaki something. If you hold the right mouse button and click in again, you've turned on your right mouse.
But what does it do?
In most screens, it activates the undo dog without you having to scroll down to it. However,
I've spent so many hours clicking that dog.
If you're in the stamp editor, it acts as a color sampler. So whatever color you're hovering over, it will instantly put that on your brush.
Fuck off.
I kid you not. It also,
oh my God.
It also turns on some rotation options when you do that. So rotate images. Anyway, that's all hidden shit that's just in the game. But my point is that it did teach me how to use the mouse. Even if it didn't teach me how to use the right mouse button until I got Windows 95. But no. I had gotten the game for my birthday that year because I was told that it was an educational tool. My parents couldn't afford it, but my grandparents got it for us.
So you were 10.
Yeah, I would have been 10 years old.
Yeah.
So I got it home. And I was like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to draw, and I'm going to figure out how to make music. And instead, I just played Nat Attack all day. Which is fine. That's great. And it taught me how to use the mouse. And that's also an important life skill that I've used way more than I've used painting or composing.
I have a lot more to say about the mouse because it's so fascinating. But I'll wait till we get to that in the show.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot to say. Tell me about the development of Mario Paint.
So there's not a ton of information out there about the development of it. There is a gaming historian video. He did 45 minutes on Mario Paint, but he doesn't touch too much on the development because, again, there's not a ton out there.
Right. It's Nintendo in the Super Nintendo era. We don't know a lot.
Exactly. They have admitted that they were trying to make more educational software at the time. And the success of this did lead on to things, great games like Mario's Missing, that everyone, especially Justin, loves.
Joy.
But the game itself was designed by Hirofumi Matuoka, who had previously worked on Metroid and Super Mario Land, and actually came on at Nintendo as a designer rather than as a director or game programmer designer. He wanted to do art style design, and this game absolutely allowed for that. And the mouse itself was created by Satoru Okata, who had helped co-create the Game & Watch alongside Gunpei Yokoi.
Mm-hmm.
So he had some hardware cred. But other than that, I couldn't find a ton of information about the actual development of the game.
Yeah, I know it was.
They just wanted to make a software educational tool.
Yeah, and it was a Gunpei Yokoi produced title as well. You know,
it was his team.
It's his level of weirdness.
Yeah, that's true. And it does have Totaka's theme in it, so he did the music for it.
Yeah. Kazumi Totaka was on the composing team for it. It's really a who's who of the weird Nintendo stuff, right?
Right.
Let's talk presentation because man, this game has it.
Yes.
The soundtrack.
We keep calling it a game, and I guess it's a game.
Well, okay. So it is more accurately a software suite.
Right.
It is 3 pieces of software in a cartridge. When you really get down to the nitty gritty, like that's what Mario Paint is. It is a paint program, a music program, and a little mini game.
Also an animation tool.
Yeah, that's true. I would probably lump that in with the art side of it, but it's art, music,
which wouldn't
and
have been the
game.
case on a PC at the time. An animation tool and an art program would have been very different pieces of software back then.
And I think it's important to remember that specifically is the time when this came out. This was not an era where digital art was easy or accessible at all.
No.
In the idea that a Super Nintendo game was going to make art more accessible, it's nuts.
And this was shortly after Windows 3 came out and started to hit prominence, which was the first version of Windows with a paint tool that supported color. Prior to that, you could only do black and white in Windows 2. So it was still relatively new to see any kind of art software that wasn't exorbitantly priced.
Yeah.
And to see it on a accessible, affordable consumer hardware was pretty big news at the time.
I think it is the greatest failing of Mario Paint that it does not have some method of export.
Well, what they did, in the manual, they mentioned that for your music, your animations, and your drawings, you plug your Super Nintendo into a VCR and you record it, and then you give the cassette to your friends.
I mean, a better method.
Well, what would it be?
I don't know. They could have come up with.
Best,
I
they could have made
idea.
a floppy disk port for a Super Nintendo, but that would have tripled the price easy.
I know. It's just I feel like Mario Paint was such a seminal work and software suite in so many young artists' lives. And especially like it for its time, it was a powerful piece of graphic software.
Oh yeah.
It not just fun or interesting or accessible, powerful.
Though it was also those things.
Yeah, you could do a lot of stuff in this that was either difficult or sometimes, depending on your computer, not possible.
Right.
For the low price of whatever retail. What was retail on this?
$59, I believe.
For $59.
And they had just dropped the price of the Super NES itself to $99. So for $160, you walk out the door with a Super Nintendo and an art tool with a mouse.
Yeah. Now, I got my copy used because if memory serves, I got my copy in 1994.
Okay.
So I would have been 5 or 6. And I never had the big guide that comes in the box.
Oh, it doesn't come in the box. You had to buy it separate.
Oh, is it separate?
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed because of the big box it was included in there, but I guess the box is just the mouse and the mouse pad.
Yep.
Yeah. I never had the guide, so I never got to enjoy what was in there. I can't even imagine what they could have put in it.
So they had offered a promotion with Nintendo Power that year that if you renewed your subscription, you would get a free Mario Paint guide. So we got that. And it has a bunch of stamp templates so that you can recreate almost every 8-bit and 16-bit first-party Nintendo game up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And also just a lot of little tools and utilities, tools and tutorials on how to create different things within the game. Mm-hmm. No real like strategies on Nat Attack, which is a shame because that's the game. Yeah. But there is a lot of like sample art and how to make the art and a lot about the composer and the stamp editor, a lot of things that you can just copy into the game to recreate it.
I feel like the biggest success of Mario Paint, at least for me, was that one, it's extremely inviting. The soundtrack is fantastic.
Yep.
And just low key enough to be something that you don't mind listening to for hours and hours and hours and hours on end. All of the art stuff you interact with, all of the menu options are very cute. They have cute sound effects. It's a very toyetic design, right? Where you just kind of want to play with the menus, which for a piece of software like this, I think is really important because if it's just MS Paint, well, that's not true. I spent a lot of hours playing in MS Paint too.
Right.
But if you make the menus have this character, and they do.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the same kind of thing that like when Nintendo talks about like Animal Crossing characters, when they're like the dialogue is part of their character because some characters are way too verbose. and it's on purpose. And they're
Mhm.
like, no, this is what we're trying to create this.
Mhm.
And I think Mario Paint is a wonderful early success story of that kind of design. This very toyetic, inviting, accessible. Like, we want you to come play with the parts of the game that aren't even really the game.
Right.
It's just, come click the menus, come click the dog's face and watch him go, and open his little ears pop up.
Yeah.
Just come hang out here.
Right.
And that's what I did in Mario Paint.
Mhm.
And this is one of the earlier pieces of software that I remember actually hanging out in.
Yeah, and it encourages that.
Like, I would hang out, I would do a bunch of art, I would save it in the big little art robot, I'd go
Mhm.
to a coloring page, I would flip over, I would load up Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and replace all of the stars with pig noises so it sounded like farts, laugh until I cried, and then go play Nat Attack, all in one piece of software.
Did you ever make the save robot break?
No.
If you have too much data in an image, mostly if
Yeah.
you just use the spray paint tool to put garbage everywhere and
Uh-huh.
fill the entire canvas so that it's all different colors everywhere,
Yeah.
the image will be larger than the actual allotted save room that the cartridge
Mhm.
offers. And so when you try to save, it'll try to save and it'll hit the limit where it can't save anymore. And it'll
Uh-huh.
show smoke coming out of his ears and he'll just say data error or something.
I don't remember doing that. It's possible I did, but I don't remember doing it. No.
We would challenge each other to try to do it. See if we could break that bastard.
But especially in the internet age, the idea of hanging out in a piece of software is much more normalized.
Right.
But this was back before, the internet existed in
Oh, yeah.
like primordial
In a
form.
consumer form, yeah.
Right? It was early, not a lot of people had it. It was very slow, it required a lot of hardware. Like it was a thing, but people weren't most people weren't spending a lot of time hanging out in software.
Right.
And that is the greatest success of this is it is a software suite that you just want to go exist in.
Right.
And this is, I know I keep drawing parallels to Animal Crossing, and I don't know if that's a thing that people do, but it's a thing I do because Animal Crossing is also a piece of software that Nintendo has made for you to just hang out in. You're not really doing anything. There are things to do, but you're mostly just there to hang out and chill.
It for me, it always like compared to art software, especially art software of the time, was very sterile and it felt like a tool. Like it was a tool you were using to create art. And Mario Paint felt more like a toy. Like it was a kid sitting on the table with crayons, just figuring stuff out. And so it was much more inviting and playful.
Yeah. So the presentation here is
Carries
everything. Yeah. In addition to just being a really good art program, a really accessible music program, and a pretty fun little clicky mini game, the presentation is what makes you just want to sort of inhabit this space.
And it starts immediately with the title screen where you can click on anything and something
can we talk
will
about
happen.
this weird fucking title screen?
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening?
It's a mouse tutorial. It's a interactive mouse tutorial that doesn't tell you it's a tutorial. It doesn't tell you you're learning
these weird
anything.
baseball guys.
Oh, well, that's after the title screen though.
Right, but what the hell is with the weird baseball guys chanting and doing sit-ups or whatever?
I've never understood the weird baseball guys. That's the loading
so
screen.
Strange.
But on the title screen, if you click any letter, it does something, and you have to click Mario to start the game. Unless you have a second controller plugged in.
And you kind of got to catch him.
Right, because he tries to run away from you.
Yeah.
So it teaches you how to use the mouse and how to move it around and how to click on things immediately before you even get into the application. And that's incredibly clever.
It is, and let's talk about the mouse, because the mouse is it's insane.
It's chunky by today's standards.
Oh, it is. As someone with a small child and watching her try to navigate the inputs on modern controllers is a futile effort. It has taken her a long time. Her Switch, she's put many hours into Animal Crossing. She's playing it a lot every day and still has to look down for every button press.
Right.
And I think we sometimes forget how long it takes to build that muscle memory.
My mom has been playing games since the 70s, and she still has to look at the controller every single time.
Yeah, it's hard, and it takes a long time to build that. And even back on the Super Nintendo, the Super Nintendo really doesn't have that many fewer buttons than most modern controllers.
Right.
You're missing the sticks and the stick clicks and 2 shoulder buttons, but beyond that, it's
basically
all
the same.
there.
Yeah.
You got 4 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, start, select, and a D-pad.
Yep.
And again, for people like us who have this language of gaming so embedded, the controller becomes secondary. You know, it's not a thing you think about, but a mouse is so much more immediately understandable to someone who does not have that gaming language. You know, oh, the thing I do is 1-to-1 mirrored on the screen. And the first time because I've had the pleasure of seeing someone learn to use a mouse for the first time because I have a kid.
Right.
And it took her a little bit to figure it out, and I had to get the speed of the mouse down.
Yeah.
But as long as I drop the speed of the mouse, the acceleration all the way to 0, it makes sense to her. It maps to her hand. She knows it's a 1-to-1 movement, and you click on stuff. It's easy.
Yeah.
And it only uses, and this is important, it only uses one hand. Because this is another thing people forget about when you're learning to use controllers is doing two different things with both your hands.
Right.
Is a thing that you have to learn that.
Yeah.
You have to take practice. She still will be in a game where she has to run and jump. And she'll run up to a platform, let go of the controller, the stick or the D-pad, and press jump straight up, fall straight back down, and not understand why she didn't go on the platform.
Right.
And I have to be like, you have to
because there's no momentum.
Yeah, you have to continue holding forward when you press it. And so the mouse, because the game would have worked fine. Well, maybe Nat Attack would have been a lot harder, but it would have worked with just regular controller.
It does on the Satellaview version.
Right, but I mean, it would have still functioned fine and probably been a celebrated piece of art software.
Right.
It's still fine. Yeah. But the idea, the inclusion of the mouse, in addition to just like you said, being a mouse when not everybody had mice and people were still kind of adopting mice, just makes it that much more inviting and that much more enjoyable, that much more ergonomic, that much more easy for small hands and young individuals.
I know plenty of people who had never even heard of a mouse before Mario Paint.
Yeah, the mouse cannot be understated. It's huge. And also the mouse works in a bunch of other games.
Yeah.
It works in Doom. It works in Breakout. Mario and Wario was one of the big Japan ones. Right. Also, the Mario's early years, the other educational games.
They all use it. Lemmings 2 will use it. I think Sim Earth uses it as well. I know Sim Ant does. I think Sim Earth does.
Civilization does, if you want to play the Super Nintendo port of Civ.
Yeah, I have that, yeah.
Super Solitaire has it. Like, there's a lot of mouse support.
Right.
And I loved my mouse. My mouse died finally. I've had the same mouse since I was a kid, and it finally died. Thankfully, Hyperkin makes one now that's a laser mouse.
Yeah, it's an optical mouse.
And the mouse pad it included was my mouse pad for years.
The big, chunky, gray plastic mouse pad.
Like on my desktop, it was my mouse pad. I do like that they included the mouse pad and they made it hard plastic so that because this is not a mouse pad that would sit at a desk. This was in your lap. Everyone had this in their lap, you know. And it also came with this little teeny tiny white tool that nobody understood what it was, but it was to clean out your mouse. Because
your mouse gun. For those people who are too young and have only had optical mice, ball mice have little tiny wheels inside that detect when the ball moves, and they accumulate crud. And every now and then you have to take the ball out and then clean the crud off your wheels, and then stick the ball back in there and close it. And rather than just using your fingernail and ending up with gunk all over your fingernail, they included this little goofy tool that you could use to clean it out.
So the thing about the rollers in mice is that the gunk would get pressed up against the wheel by the ball rolling against it.
Yeah.
And so when I was a kid, it was like, I know this is kind of like pulling a scab off sort of thing. This was kind of gross. But it would be exciting to me if I could get the layer of gunk off in one strip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, same here.
One gunky strip.
Right. Without having to rotate the wheel around the whole time?
Without having to rotate the wheel or without breaking it into multiple strips. Yep. It's like peeling an apple all in one peel, you know. You're like, I got it all off. And then you dangle it up and you show it to your brother like, yeah, look. You know, like.
Yeah, I remember I used to always do that and like, just set them next to the mouse pad until I could go throw them away. And one time my mom came in and she was like, that's old skin cells and stuff.
It is,
and
like
suddenly,
skin and sweat and shit.
I never wanted to touch it again. Like if I couldn't find the tool, I was like, I can't play Mario Paint today. The mouse is too gross.
Yeah. Let's talk about the actual software and what it can do. And then we can talk about Nat Attack a little bit. The art software has a lot of different functions, a lot of different color palettes. You can draw, you can spray paint, you can fill. It's got this. I love this. When you go to clear the whole screen, you get to choose the animation it does to clear the screen.
Right. I was just
so
rocket
fun.
ship.
I like when you do the bucket fill, the paintbrush comes out and he does a little dance while it's filling.
Which is good because it
it's
takes
great.
forever for it to fill.
It does. Takes a long time. I played with the stamps a ton.
Oh yeah, me too.
And the stamps I think are really integral to this because it includes a lot of pre-made ones that are Mario stamps. And more importantly, it includes most of them in pieces.
Yes.
So you can put like Mario's head on Yoshi's body and be like, "Oh my God, look, he turned like it." It sounds so dumb,
and it also
but, like,
taught me as a young kid how sprites work because
Yeah.
it had never occurred to me that Mario was made up of multiple pieces. I just thought of Mario as one unit.
Yeah, he's Mario.
And then suddenly I'm seeing in Mario Paint that he's actually made out of these separate components that go together, and you only have to move the bottom component. His head stays the same.
Yeah.
And it taught me how the whole sprite animation style works.
I think the most important thing about stamps for me was that I was not artistically gifted. And so when you're a little kid going to get in this software, you can't really draw much.
No.
But you could draw a tree and some grass, and then you can just stamp characters onto it, and it looks cool.
Yeah, I remember one of the first things that we did as far as animation goes was we made a little tree with Mario under it, and instead of apples, we put bombs in the tree, and we just made them kind of dance back and forth. And that was one of the earliest things that we did with the software. And it's so basic, and all the tools are right there, so that you can do it in minutes.
Yeah, like the robust stamp library, because it's not just that it has stamps, it's that it has a robust library built in.
And it lets you make your own stamps, which is where that strategy guide came in handy. And also, for a little while, Nintendo Power was putting some sample stamps in the magazine just because of how popular the game was, so that people could make Kirby or Link or whatever. But all of that was in the strategy guide. So if you wanted to make Samus or Link or any of the Nintendo characters, all of them were in there. Yeah. And that was super exciting to me. And I always tried to recreate characters like Mega Man or whatever in there, and could never quite figure it out just because I didn't have that template.
I spent a lot of time in the coloring books. Because again, I'm 6. That's coloring book age.
Right. And I also had no artistic ability, so I spent some time in the coloring books.
But it taught me a lot about color palettes, because it's all like Mario art. So you know what color.
Not all of it.
Everything.
There's also like a birthday cake and
there's
like
kind of some generic, But I could look at these things and say, hey, I know what this Mario art looks like because I have Super Mario World.
Yeah,
and I could go in there and change the palette. Yep. And to this day, I still have a good sense of complementary colors and palettes that my wife compliments me on, and I imagine maybe not all of it, but it was seeded by coloring books in Mario Paint and being able to quickly move colors around, see what works, what doesn't work, what makes something pop. It was an integral skill working with colors that I learned from Mario Paint.
I did not learn that skill. I instead just made garbage.
My wife still has to ask me. She'll be like, does this match? Do these colors go together? Do they clash? Because she doesn't, she struggles with it, And it's a thing I still use today. I paint miniatures, and miniatures are very much, you have a color palette, and then you have maybe a couple of color pops, that clash a little bit, but they're on small enough elements that it adds character instead of making it look bad. And, it's a skill for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the video game in the video game.
Yes.
Which is
we didn't talk about animations.
Oh, yeah, animations. Yes, you can animate things.
Yeah, it lets you do like 4 or 9 frame animations depending on how big you want it. And you can put it on top of a canvas so that things will move around. And that's really neat.
Yes. Well, and I guess there's not a lot to say about the music creator.
Oh, I love the music creator
It's fun.
I spent more time in the music creator than I ever did with actually drawing or coloring anything.
It was probably an even split for me. Probably was. I struggled to understand a lot of the music stuff. Like I could see that the higher a note was, the higher it sounded, and stuff like that. But actually stringing together songs, it was usually it was a struggle for me. More often than not, I would load up a song and modify that song, which I think is like, first of all, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think we need to recognize that in 1992, this was software with pre-built songs that you could then modify the
Right.
song
Yeah. And
by
change
note.
the instruments or
Which changed the instruments, and the instrument library is bizarre and weird.
yeah, you could place all the notes with that creepy baby noise.
But then also, what was exciting about the instruments to me is that I was 6. I didn't know like the difference between like a cymbal crash or like the two little cymbals that tap into what are they
Yeah,
called?
yeah.
They tap together, you
hi-hat,
know,
yeah.
the little clam cymbals. Musicians out there pulling their hair out right
Yes.
now. But because they were things, like I know what a pig sounds like.
Right.
You know, I know what the little Yoshi sounds like. So
Yeah.
it's the ability to show a kid like, hey, you don't know what all these instruments sound like, you know, these 3 different kinds of brass or whatever. But if I put a goose there, you know, it makes kind of
Right.
a honky sort of noise. And if I
Yeah.
put a boat there, it makes a boaty sort of noise.
I probably learned my first steps about reading music from Mario Paint, and I remember
Yeah.
I was super disappointed that there were some songs I just could not get to work in there. Like no matter how I tried, the notes wouldn't get close enough together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started band in 6th grade, a couple of years after this, that my director was like, "Oh, there's half notes and grace notes and all this other stuff." I was like, "Oh, Mario Paint didn't have any of that."
Yeah.
And then I was retroactively frustrated with it. But the strategy guide did have a ton of game music and also other music that you could just plug in there and create.
Right.
And that helped me kind of learn how all of it worked.
I don't want to diminish how accessible and fun the music creator was. I do think the music creator as a music creation tool felt less robust than the art creation did as an art creation tool.
Now, that said, you can go download Mario Paint Composer,
Yes.
which is a piece of software made by fans that kind of simulates the original Mario Paint composition tool, but
Yeah.
gives you more instruments. It gives
Right.
you more utility, in that you can put different time signatures and different length notes and everything. And you can even do sharps and flats, which is completely unheard of in Mario Paint.
Yeah.
And you can make much more robust music with it.
I think, and I'm not a musical person, so maybe I'm just full of shit, but I feel like music is a little harder to distill down to its base elements and still feel powerful.
Though I have seen interviews with people who say that are now musicians or composers that are like,
Oh,
well, I got my
absolutely.
start with Mario Paint. I didn't know shit about
Absolutely.
music. I saw Mario Paint and started to figure it out.
I think the music composer defines itself by the limitations it puts on people, forcing
Yeah.
you to play with the basic elements of
Right.
music. And I think that's really good for building foundation.
Mm-hmm.
The art creation tools don't really force you to play with, a minimum level of basic, because it's art. It's
Right.
here's a blank canvas, do stuff on it, right? It's
Now
just,
there are limitations on the art side too.
Certainly
like there's
there
no
are.
pink.
oh, huh, well, oh, never thought
There's-
about it.
There's purple and there's red
Mm-hmm.
and there's white, but there's no pink.
Right. There's no real like color mixing
No.
isn't really a thing. The minimum pixel size for a single dot is pretty large.
However, if you make a stamp that is just a single pixel, you can then use that as a brush.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is just that the music creator tool, while still very robust and still extremely influential in a lot of people's lives,
Oh yeah.
to me it didn't feel as robust as the art creation tool was a piece of art creation software. But let's talk about Nat Attack,
I love Nat Attack.
which is about the most basic game you could include,
Right.
in which you're a hand swatting flies.
Yeah, you play as the Hamburger Helper mascot.
No, Saturn, it's Master Hand from Smash Brothers.
You play as the Hamburger Helper mascot. And he has
You do have a
fly
little
swatter.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just swat flies and they get increasingly more difficult. There's boss flies, and it's just a fun mouse. It's basically a mouse training game,
Right.
is
Yeah,
what it is.
It always felt like somewhere between a shmup and a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it does not. It's not the most robust game. There's not a
No.
lot going on. There's nothing really in the way of
But
like.
it is challenging because
is.
they will attack you, and you'll watch your little hand get all freaked out when he dies.
Yeah. I think as far as like teaching kids to quickly move and click on
Yes.
things, it was vital. And again, it's weird to think about like needing to teach kids how to use a mouse these days.
No,
But I think that that's what Nat Attack kind of does. You know,
Well,
Go
we're
ahead.
returning to the era where people need to learn to use a mouse again because
This is
everybody's using
true.
touchscreens now. And
Yeah.
and I have seen grown adults at my office pick up a mouse and try to point it at the screen like it's a Wii remote or something.
No, you have not.
So it's
Oh,
not
no.
impossible for someone to know how to use a mouse these days.
Makes me think of that Simpsons bit where Homer sits down and like picks up the mouse and he's like, "Computer on," like talks into it.
Right.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Now I'm sad and I feel so old.
Yeah. Also,
yeah,
Scotty in Star Trek 4. when he's
Where the
talking on
title
mouse.
screen kind of teaches you, like, hey, this is sort of the basic functions of a mouse.
Yes.
Nat Attack lets you master the mouse.
Right.
Because to really get good at Nat Attack, you do have to master, mouse movement, quickly moving around and clicking on things, and it quickly builds that muscle memory.
Yeah. Which is not a muscle set you need to use to do art.
No, not at
Turns
all.
out there is no reflexes required.
No, none whatsoever. Let's talk a little bit more about how the game was received.
Mhm.
Because it kind of shocks me how well Mario Paint was received.
Yeah.
And I say this because it's very much, again, two pieces of software in a small game.
Mm-hmm.
And usually stuff like that doesn't hit well with reviewers.
Right.
They're like, hey, this isn't really a video game. It's just some software.
Right.
But it, for the most part, got really good reviews and was
Oh,
well
yeah.
received.
Yeah, and it ended up being the highest selling Super Famicom game in Japan within 2 weeks of its release, the highest selling game up to that point of the Super Famicom library, and it is even now the 19th highest selling Super NES game of all time,
Yeah.
having sold over 2.3 million copies over the course of the Super Nintendo's life, which
Yeah.
is a fairly small number in today terms, but this was the early 90s.
Yeah.
It did win a Parents' Choice Award in '92 for educational software, and it was generally well received by magazines, getting pretty high reviews. There were some criticisms.
The reviews were, it was either 90 or a 4. Like it was
Right,
wildly in between.
Yeah,
And I was looking at some of the criticisms, and they're basically complaining about the technological limitations of it as a piece
Right.
of creation software.
right.
And I
Because there are some limitations on
There
it that
are.
don't necessarily need to be there that the Super Nintendo could have handled, but they opted for usability and ease of use and making it fun and playable more than they made it functional.
right. And I think viewing it's hard. And this is where you get
Yeah.
kind of in the weeds, is that reviewing this as a piece of art creation software, it's going to have a lot of really basic artist features that are missing, but also it doesn't require a $3,000 computer, an expensive
Exactly.
mouse, and hundreds of dollars in software to use, right?
Yeah, you didn't have to spend thousands of dollars on an Amiga or an Apple. You could just put
Yeah.
it on a Super Nintendo, which was dirt cheap at the time.
Like, yes, MS Paint is more functional, but
Barely.
MS Paint wasn't really there.
Yeah, MS Paint for Windows 3 is not very functional. It is.
Yeah, it doesn't do much.
No.
But it's absolutely a very celebrated game. As you said, a lot of musicians and artists cite Mario Paint
Yep.
as an early example of software that got them interested and engaged and feeling capable, which I think is an important thing for kids, is feeling capable, feeling
Right.
like you can do this, feeling like it's not too hard. Because
Yeah.
I see my daughter still sit down with stuff and go, well, I want to play this, but she got the Kirby game, the
Yeah.
Return to Dreamland
Okay.
Deluxe, whatever,
Yeah.
Turbo
The-
Hyper Fighting Edition,
The remake of the Wii one.
and she likes it, but it's hard for her. I mean, she literally can't die in the game. Well, I guess you can. No, you can die. It's just really hard to do because they let you play with like a easy mode.
Yeah.
But it's difficult for her, and she's only got so much patience for a thing that is difficult.
Right.
And I think this taking art and music and making it have
Accessible.
virtually no barriers
Yeah.
is huge, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why so many kids are like, yeah, this was software that I sat down and I felt like I can do this.
Right.
It's not the most robust graphic software in the world and wasn't at
No.
the time, but I can do it. And I
Yeah.
don't have to ask questions or go get help. Like, it's intuitive and I can understand it. And even when I struggle, the menus themselves are fun and cute to look at and enjoyable. It's relaxing. It's so relaxing. Mario Paint is so relaxing, Saturn.
And it's accessible. It's something
is.
that you don't need any kind of degree to mess with. You just sit down and you dick around and you're going to draw something.
Let's talk Legacy.
Yeah.
Um,
So one thing I forgot to put in the notes as far as Legacy goes, Sega tried to make their own art tool. I don't remember what it was called, Sonic something something.
Yeah.
And it came with the Mega Mouse, and it sold very poorly, to the
Oh.
point to where I don't remember the name of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
It's
It and eventually Sega did release the Pico, which they considered to be their educational tool
right.
that would compete with Mario Paint, and I guess it kind of did.
Yeah.
Um,
As far as Legacy, this kind of was the prototype for the Mario Artist series
Yep,
on the 64 DD,
Yep.
Which was a suite
Yep.
of games.
that didn't all even release. I think 3 of the announced 6 Mario Artists
Yeah.
actually released.
And it comes, there's an N64 mouse, which
Mm-hmm.
is nice looking.
Yep.
And it's a little bit less of an experience and
Yeah.
more, it like just looking at it, messing around with it, it feels more like art creation software than like, this is a toy that kids
Right.
play with, but also you can do art.
Yeah, it feels much more stoic.
So while I think it increased the capability of this, you know, if we'll call it a series of games, and moved it forward technologically, I think what it missed out on was making it feel like something you want to play in and inhabit and just exist within the confines of.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Super Mario Maker does the opposite. Super Mario Maker is a game that, and 2 games really,
Yeah.
that especially
3.
the first one. Is there 3?
Wii, Wii U, and 3DS.
Oh, I just meant Mario Maker 1 and 2, but yeah, you're right.
Okay. Or
Um,
sorry, yeah, Wii U, 3DS, and Switch are the
Yeah.
3 of them.
But Super Mario Maker is a game that I just hung out in and goofed off in and played around with, you know. And I think that whereas the Mario Artist series was like, all right, this is for people that want to do more serious art, Mario Maker feels more like, all right, well, this is for people that just want to hang out and goof off in a piece of software, kind of making stuff, but not really, maybe
Right.
sometimes.
And it was originally meant to be a Mario Paint game when it
That
was
makes
being
me so
developed for
sad.
Wii U,
That's so sad.
and instead they ended up making Mario Maker.
Like Mario Maker is great. I really do prefer the first one to the second one by a wide margin.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
and it
like
makes-
it because of the weird mushroom.
The weird mushroom?
Yeah, in the original Super Mario
Oh,
Maker.
yeah. There is
that-
that makes you go all goofy.
Yeah, and also
Like,
all the amiibo mushrooms. Those are neat too.
Yeah. It's Mario Maker's a great piece of software. It again, it's a piece of software that I just hang out in and do stuff. And it has that modality thing of like, all right, I'm playing a Mario game. Okay, now I'm going to go kind of make a Mario game. Okay, now I'm going to take a level that I like and add some weird stuff to it. All right, now I'm going to go find a course online to play. And it's that idea of like, whenever I feel like doing something different, I don't have to close this software.
Right.
I can just keep going in here.
And it
That
has the Undo Dog in it.
It does have the Undo Dog that I think and he's got a body now. They give him a
Yes.
body.
Yep.
Got a whole body. And I think that Mario Maker nailed that idea of like, this is just some software to hang out in and do different things and goof off. And I really love that about the Mario Maker series. And I am still upset that we haven't gotten Zelda Maker or Metroid
Right.
Maker. Or, could you imagine a Metroid Maker Saturn?
Oh man, that'd be amazing.
Why don't they just make an? I'm off on a tangent. But yeah, the Mario Artist series and Mario Maker are kind of the logical extrapolations of what Mario Paint started.
Yeah.
And I think both achieve things in that realm in very different ways from one another.
Yeah.
Although I think Mario Maker in a much more successful way, because like you said, the Mario Artist series kind of
Fizzled.
fizzled. You know.
Well, it was on the 64 disk drive. I mean, who was going to buy it?
As far as final thoughts, I'm a grown, almost 35-year-old man, and I can still boot up Mario Paint and have a good time and enjoy it, and it's fun. My daughter enjoys it. I think it's still today still a really great piece of software to hand to kids to play around with, to draw dicks in and put Yoshis on in, whatever whatever you want to do with it. It is not even remotely as powerful as the Paint software built into pretty much any operating system that you might install today.
Yeah.
But I think it still maintains that as an experience of goofing off, of playing around with the menus, of discovering little things in it. I think it still holds up. I honestly do. Like, I think someone who's never played Mario Paint, who's a grown adult, could still boot it up and have fun for a couple hours.
Yeah. I am a grown-ass 40-year-old adult, and I powered it up the other day and still was finding some fun just tinkering around in it.
Yeah, it's a blast, and I hope that one day we get the sequel we deserve. Although, honestly, if it wasn't on the DS or the 3DS, I don't know what they're going to put it on.
Right.
Because those were the touchscreen systems. That was your fucking chance, Nintendo.
The Switch has a touchscreen.
Yeah, but they don't do touchscreen specific,
There's been a couple of touchscreen specific games on there.
Yeah, but Nintendo ones?
No.
I feel like Nintendo tries to mostly avoid that. Like, I know like Mario Maker 2 supported the touchscreen.
Right. Well, that's because people like me don't want to take the system out of the dock.
Yeah, and I get that, but I just feel like Nintendo seems to avoid situations where it's a game that you can't adequately play on the dock, which I get. I understand it. Even though one of the 3 Switches doesn't even support the dock.
Yeah.
For some stupid reason. But I digress. It should have been on the 3DS. That should have been the Mario Paint Suite.
Or the Wii U.
Or the Wii U. Either one. Where is it? Give it to me, Nintendo. I want it. Give me Mario Paint 2, please. Oh, my God.
They're going to release it for iOS on Apple Arcade.
Fuck you, Saturn. Fuck you. How dare you put that in the world? How dare you? You know what they're going to do? They're going to release it on iOS, and they're going to sell the stamps as NFTs.
Oh, God.
And everyone's going to defend it and go, well, at least it's not on Switch. I mean, it's a mobile game. You can ignore it, so it's okay that Nintendo's doing totally fucked up anti-consumer stuff.
And if you want to make your own stamps, it'll be a separate application that you have to purchase.
I'm going to throw up. Saturn, you've ruined Mario Paint. It has been ruined now.
Ruined.
And if you want more things ruined...
Well, don't worry. Just hit the undo dog. It'll undo all that.
We have a Patreon where you can go listen to us ruin other stuff. Like, I don't know, things that we might ruin. Cereal. We're and I have an upcoming cereal chat with Andrew on next week's Talking Wizards, so I'm excited to... I got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Monster Mayhem cereal. And I'm not going to tell you what I think about it. You'll have to listen to Talking Wizards and see. We also have Read Along and the other stuff we do. Uncut. There's an uncut version of this show you can listen to where we talk about phones. It's more entertaining than it'll make it sound.
That's a weird way to say phones there.
Phones. But we want to thank the following patrons for their kind donations, starting with Jerry Foz.
And Jose Rodriguez.
Keith Simon. Are
you done?
Yep.
Loco Mojo.
Nicholas Grind.
Onionoi.
Please floss after every meal.
That's excellent advice. Rantic.
Sad Billy Mitchell noises.
And Smitty.
Are all the patrons we want to thank for giving us money. Please give us money. We like money.
Hell, you like money.
You like money too, Saturn.
Oh, yeah.
Money can be turned into video games.
Right?
In case people weren't aware of the economic transaction at play here, you can turn money into games.
What?
It's
I like Money Idol Exchanger.
If you don't want to do the Patreon thing, we get it. I was just bitching yesterday that everything is a subscription. We also have merch on Redbubble. You can also just send us a one-time donation through Ko-Fi, Coffee. I can't pronounce things this episode.
That's fine.
Ko-Fi. How are you supposed to pronounce it? Because the little button says buy me a coffee, but then it's clearly hyphenated Ko-Fi. Yeah. So I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce it, but I do know that if you go there, you can send us a couple bucks for, maybe you enjoy the show and you're like, hey, I don't want to give you money every month. That's dumb. Subscriptions suck. Here's $5 for the 425 episodes you've put out there.
Or if you can't afford to spare a few bucks and you just like the show, then rate and review us and tell your friends about it.
That's also a good thing. We like that as well because there's no algorithm here. we live in the algorithmless world of self-hosted RSS feeds, and we refuse to exit it. So, that would be a...
So we won't listen to society's rules.
I know. Yeah, that's it. Anarchy! I know we've said it before, but I do want to reiterate, if you ever hear an ad on our show, in our show, before our show, or after our show, that wasn't us.
Right. We didn't put that there.
Please be like, hey, these assholes are rehosting your show and putting ads in it, because it has happened.
Unless it's a fake ad, then that might have been us.
Yeah, that might have been. Me and Andrew have done a few Doritos ads in Talking Wizards. And he keeps doing Mountain Dew bits. I don't know why. It's usually him holding up the can and smiling at me, and I have to remind him that no one can see it.
I can't believe he drinks Mountain Dew.
They have so many flavors of Mountain Dew now. We went over them in a big list on the show one time. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.